In this episode, I will discuss the evolution of paper money in Western Europe from the 16th to the first half of the 18th century. The first paper money appeared in China during the 10th century under the Tang dynasty, issued by a group of private merchants. The government began printing paper money in the early 11th century, likely around 1024, during the Song dynasty, 960-1278. The printing of money continued under the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty, 1278 to 1368, and was halted under the subsequent dynasty. However, due to the isolated nature of the Middle Kingdom, this invention had no significant impact on the development of currency circulation worldwide. In the 16th and 17th centuries, paper money began to circulate in Europe. However, before discussing this circulation, it is important to first understand the nature of paper money and the conditions of its circulation. The concept of paper money includes both credit money and actual paper currency. The most common type of credit money is banknotes. The characteristic features of banknotes are issuance by a central issuing bank or a private company, the obligation to exchange them for gold or silver upon the holder's request, and the backing by gold, silver, or commercial bills held in the bank's portfolio. Banknotes could be issued in any denomination and remain in circulation for any length of time, which allowed them to be used for all types of payments. Actual paper money, on the other hand, consists of inconvertible tokens issued by the state to cover its expenses and endowed with a compulsory exchange rate, legally recognized as obligatory for acceptance in all forms of payment. Paper money resembles banknotes in appearance, as well as in the fact that both paper money and banknotes are inherently non-valuable because they lack intrinsic material value. However, the difference between them is quite significant. A banknote is a proof of credit issued by a banker. Its value derives from the obligation of the bank, which it represents. Paper money, in contrast, derives its value because it is recognized as legal tender by law. In Europe, the first paper money appeared in the Netherlands during the war for independence from Spain. In 1573 to 1574, Spanish forces laid siege to the city of Leiden. The townspeople managed to hold the city, and on October 2, 1574, the Gozen, Dutch rebels, forced the Spanish to withdraw. During the siege, the city council of Leiden, due to a shortage of coinage, issued paper notes for 20 stivers, which were later exchanged for real money once the siege was lifted. These notes were made from pressed paper on which the Catholic Bible was printed. However, this was only a one-time occurrence, prompted by extraordinary circumstances, and as a result, paper money did not remain in circulation for long. The main form of money continued to be regular coinage. The banknote circulation emerged in the second half of the 17th century in England. The main reason for its emergence was the mismatch between the high level of trade development and the extremely primitive state of coin circulation. As in the medieval period, coins were still minted using a hammer. After minting, each coin was not weighed. The aim was simply to ensure that a specific number of coins were produced from a mark of silver. As a result, different coins had varying weights, which made it easier to clip the heavier ones. In England, however, as early as 1663, coins began to be produced solely by machine, with the weight of each coin checked and struck by a press. But until 1732, both new and old coins circulated simultaneously, and the old coins, which could easily be clipped, drove the good quality coins out of circulation. Therefore, as before, merchants established a standard unit of account for their transactions, one that was common to all and independent of the type or quality of different coins. This unit was used to assess the value of various coins and to conduct calculations and payments. This ideal and stable monetary unit, known as the fair or bank coin, existed in the Middle Ages and continued to be used at fairs during the 16th and 17th centuries. Merchant contributions were paid in cash coins regardless of the quality of the coins they deposited, with the bank coin being either the best available coin or a specific amount of precious metal. When accepting money from depositors, bankers would grant them credit in accordance with the amount of bank coin contained in the deposited funds. The primary goal of these operations was to facilitate wholesale trade, which, like in the medieval period, was conducted through the transfer of entries in accounting records known as juro transactions. All calculations between a banker's clients were made by recording sums in bank coin in the bank's books, without the need for physical cash. For a long time in England, similar functions were performed not by bankers, but by goldsmiths, who, in addition to making gold items, accepted deposits and converted them into bank coin. However, unlike continental bankers, who used bank coin to settle transactions between merchants, goldsmiths issued their clients certificates called goldsmiths' notes, which allowed clients to settle their mutual obligations as effectively as with juro transactions. From the second half of the 17th century, those goldsmiths who specialized in deposit operations began to function as bankers, and these certificates became known as bankers' notes or banknotes. If part of the sum was withdrawn, the corresponding amount would be noted on the note, and it would remain valid for the remaining balance. Later, instead of one such certificate, bankers began issuing several smaller denomination notes, which together represented the value of the deposit. These notes were convenient not only for settling accounts between merchants, but also for any payments for goods or services, and due to the poor condition of coinage, they were eagerly accepted. Banknotes were accepted not only by the bank's depositors, but also by individuals who had no accounts with the bank, knowing that the specified sum would be paid upon presentation of the note. At first, banknotes were handwritten, but later they began to be printed, and banknotes effectively became a means of payment, gradually replacing coins. However, the first official paper money was not printed in England, but in Sweden in 1661. The Swedish authorities needed credit, and the head of the Stockholm Bank, instead of issuing loans in copper coins, decided to print credit notes, which were called paper dailers. The next stage in the development of paper money was again connected to England. In 1694, the Bank of England was established as an issuing bank and began issuing banknotes with denominations ranging from £5 to £100. In 1725, banknotes with a denomination of £1,000 were introduced, and in 1797, banknotes in £1 and £2 denominations began to be issued. By the end of the 17th century, paper money began to be used in the English colonies of North America. In 1690, the first issue of paper money in the amount of £7,000 was made in the colony of Massachusetts to pay soldiers who had returned from a military expedition to Quebec against the French. Initially, these notes lost value, but they were quickly brought back to their nominal value by allowing them to be used to pay taxes with a 5% surcharge compared to coins, and by promising to redeem them within 12 months. The attempt was fairly successful, and in 1709, Massachusetts issued a second round of notes, followed by all the colonies except North Carolina. The results were the same everywhere: excessive issuance, delays and deferrals in redemption, devaluation, and, in most cases, a refusal to redeem. In 1751, the British Parliament banned the issuance of paper money in New England, and in 1764 extended this ban to other colonies. In Norway, Paper money was attempted to be introduced in 1695. In Denmark, it was tried in 1713. In France, money printing began under Louis XIV, and these notes were immediately assigned a fixed compulsory exchange rate, which meant they became paper money rather than banknotes. The successful functioning of banknotes in England prompted a merchant from Edinburgh, John Law, 1671 to 1729, to propose a plan to replace full-value money with paper currency. Most European countries were not interested in this project. The exception was France, which faced significant financial difficulties due to a severe shortage of money after the costly reign of Louis XIV. The government of Louis XV invited John Law, and in 1716 he opened the private General Bank, which began issuing banknotes. In 1719, the bank became the state-owned Royal Bank, and in 1720 it went bankrupt after issuing an excessive amount of banknotes, leading to widespread bankruptcies and the ruin of holders of these so-called banknotes. Thus, the story of the evolution of paper money in Western Europe from the 16th to the first half of the 18th century is complete. Goodbye.